So good evening, everybody. Richard Barfield, I'm the Chief Financial Officer at Ergomed. Delighted to have the opportunity to speak with you this evening. And I must say it's a great pleasure to be able to talk directly to private and individual investors. We are in the middle of our institutional roadshow, having announced our results yesterday morning, and to have the opportunity to talk to, as I said, private and individual investors as part of the same process and give you the same access to the company and to management as those institutions is a real pleasure. So I'm delighted to be here this evening. This is the same presentation that we're using with our institutional investors. So I'm delighted to be able to speak to you about Ergomed this evening. Ergomed is a company which is a leader, a specialised leader in orphan drug development, oncology and patient safety. Now, what does that mean? We are what's called a contract research or a clinical research organisation. We provide a clinical trial outsourcing service to pharmaceutical companies, mainly in the biotech and specialty pharma area, in the areas of rare disease, for which orphan drugs are developed, and oncology, in other words, cancer treatments. And then patient safety is what's otherwise known as pharmacovigilance. And this is the whole process of monitoring, assessing, reporting adverse drug reactions for marketed drugs. So it's extremely topical in the times that we're all going through at the moment. On this chart, we're giving an overview of our company, and I'm going to emphasize two particular points on this chart. One is growth. So we have a very strong growth record ever since the company was floated on the AIM market in 2014. And you can see that since that time, over the past 6 years, we have grown at a compound annual growth rate of over 20%. The same is true of the year that we've just announced, where our revenue growth was 26.5%. And we're very focused on the US market, where over the past year we have grown by 82%. So that's the growth story, which is continuing as we go into 2021. The other theme I'd like to bring out is one of geographic reach, and we are a truly global company. You can see that our reach spans North America, Europe, Middle East, North Africa, and the Asia Pacific. We have 16 offices worldwide. We support clinical trials in over 60 countries worldwide, and we support our clients' products in pharmacovigilance in over 100 countries worldwide. The market that we operate in is the global market for clinical research, and that is a $42.3 billion market globally. It's growing at over 6%, typically in the range of 6 to 7% per annum, and is scheduled to do so over the next few years. But within that market, our focus, as I mentioned earlier, is in the two really key areas of oncology and rare disease. And you can see on the right-hand side of the page here that those markets that we specialize in are growing at a rate which is faster than the average for the market as a whole. So oncology, roughly about a third of the market, is growing at 9.2% per annum. Rare disease, a $5.6 billion market, is growing at 10.8%. If you combine those two markets, it represents about 50%, about half of the global market, and that is the area that we specialize in. And as I said, it's the faster growing areas. The other area of specialism for us is pharmacovigilance. This is a global $5.1 billion market, growing at 16% per annum, so it's growing at a faster rate again than the areas that I've just spoken about. And then I do also mention here the USA, which is critically important, the largest, most dynamic, fastest growing pharmaceutical market in the world. over 50% of clinical trials require a presence in the USA, and that's why we have had, over the past couple of years, such a strong focus on growing our business in the USA and North America. On this slide, we talk about our presence in the broader global market. So the global CRO market splits between large companies, of which there are 6 to 8, mid-tier companies, of which there are 10 to 15. We are now in that mid-tier. We're competing with other mid-tier companies. There is a process of consolidation which is taking place both at the top of the market and in the mid-tier. And our intent and ambition is to play a significant role in that consolidation in the market through M&A, and also through taking market share as other mid-tier companies are typically bought up by larger companies. This chart gives you a snapshot of our financial performance over the course of 2020. Our service fee revenue went up 32%. In North America, we grew by 82%. Our adjusted EBITDA went up at twice the rate of our revenue, so it went up 55%. And we increased our number of employees by 35%. So we started the year at 850. Through acquisitions and through organic growth, we grew to 1,150 by the end of the year. We also, over the course of the year, a very challenging year in many respects for reasons that I'm sure we all understand, we also delivered on a number of our strategic objectives which we had set out previously and which we executed and delivered on. Our financial performance in 2020 was excellent. I'll say a lot more about that in the rest of the presentation. We also completed some really key areas of our strategic transition. We are now a fully services-based company. We had previously been involved in co-development activity where we took a share in the development of new drugs and therapies. We're no longer doing that, and we're fully focused on high-margin third-party service. Our response to the COVID-19 pandemic has been quite resilient. So we've gone through the year with no furloughs, no layoffs. We haven't taken any government grants or subsidies. Our employment has increased by 35%, as I've just shown, and our revenues continued to grow as we went through the year. We completed 2 acquisitions during the course of this year, one in the pharmacovigilance area, one in the clinical trials area, and both of those in the USA. So again, focusing on our strategic objective of growing our business rapidly in the US. And we're starting 2021 with a very solid, robust financial base for the future growth of the business. This is a snapshot of our overall financial performance in 2020. The revenue was up 26.5%. Within that, excluding the pass-through revenues, which also goes through our top line, our service fee revenue was up 32.4%. And excluding the impact of acquisitions, our like-for-like service fee revenue was up 19%. We grew our gross margin by nearly 35% and expanded our margin by 2.6 percentage points. And as I mentioned earlier, our EBITDA went up by 55.2%, more than double the rate of our revenue increase. We also had a strong cash performance, and our order book, which I'll say a lot more about on a later slide, grew by 55%. We conducted a capital reduction, which our investors approved unanimously, and that increased our retained earnings and strengthened our balance sheet to the tune of about £50 million. And our earnings per share went up by almost 30%. I spoke earlier about the increase in our service fee revenue, and you can see here that overall that increase was both in our CRO business and in Prime Vigilance, which is our pharmacovigilance business. CRO was impacted slightly in the first half of the year by the COVID-19 pandemic, but you'll see later that there was a very strong resumption of growth in the second half of the year. Pharmacovigilance grew by 56%, and excluding the impact of acquisitions, the organic growth in the pharmacovigilance business was 30%. In both businesses, we increased our gross margin, as you can see on the right-hand side of the page. Emphasizing on this schedule, the increase in our CRO service fee. Okay, hope you can see that clearly. So I'm just emphasizing on this schedule, the increase in our service fee revenue, which over the second half of the year grew by 13.5% compared to the first half, and compared to the corresponding period in 2019, grew by 16.7%. On this slide, I'm showing the impact of the transition to a full service-based model in our business. Previously, co-development, which is effectively work at very low or zero margin, made up about 25% of our revenues. In 2020, that has fallen to less than 10%. And the corollary of that is that our third-party service fee revenue grew to 91%, almost 91% of our revenue. And that's a 17% increase year on year on our third-party service fees. On this chart, we're demonstrating the growth in our North America, in our USA business. And you can see that the dark blue piece of the pie here, 37% in 2019, grew to 54% in 2020. That's an 82% increase in the revenues, going up from 25.6 million to 46.7 million in North America. On the right-hand side of the chart here, we're talking about the growth in our contracted order book. And I'd like to just spend a second talking about this, because this is a very important feature of our business. In both our CRO business and in our pharmacovigilance business, we have contracted, committed revenue streams with contracts and studies which roll out typically over a 2 to 3 year period. And this gives us a very high level of visibility of our future contracted revenue. So to give an order of magnitude, in 2020, at the start of the year, we would have typically somewhere between 80 and 85% visibility, in other words, predictability of the revenue that we will achieve in the following year, 2021. And that means that we have a high degree of certainty that our targets will be achieved, and that the revenue and the associated profit that goes with that has a high likelihood of achievement. And that puts us in a very strong position, both from a financing and from an execution perspective. On this chart, we're talking about our cash flow, which was very strong in 2020. On the left-hand side, you can see the tall light blue bar, the 19 million of operating cash flow. Just a reminder that our EBITDA in 2020 was 19.4 million. In other words, our cash conversion from EBITDA to cash was around 98%. We have very little capex. We have a small amount of working capital movement as we grow during the course of the year. But by and large, our EBITDA converts to cash. And what that means is that we have a steadily increasing cash balance. That process has continued since the year end. So when we talk about our firepower now that's available for investment, whether in technology, in organic growth, or in M&A, we have over 20 million pounds of our own cash. We are completely debt free, and we have an unutilized 30 million pound financing facility with HSBC, which was put in place specifically to support M&A. I'm going to say a few words about each of our two businesses now and highlight some very current topics in those two businesses. Firstly, talking about the CRO business, and then moving on to the pharmacovigilance business. In CRO, one of the things that's happened with the COVID-19 pandemic is that the transition to new technology and the impact of that technology on our business has been accelerated. And this is because the regulatory authorities, the FDA in North America, the European Medicines Agency in Europe, and the MHRA here in the UK have very quickly got behind the transition to the use of technology, and in particular, various remote aspects of running this business. So things like remote patient consent, remote patient monitoring, remote data collection, and so on. And we have been investing in this area for a number of years. We regard ourselves as being in the vanguard of this transition to the use of technology, and we believe we're in a strong position, and this gives us a significant competitive advantage. I talked earlier about our focus on oncology and rare disease, and we said that this was a strategic objective for us because of the increased growth in those two areas. And you can see here that from 2019, when oncology and rare represented about 66% of our revenue, we have now transitioned to 88% of our revenue being in those two key strategic areas. And then finally, I'll just say a few words about MedSource, the company that we acquired in December 2020. This was a terrific acquisition for us, bringing in 20 new clients, over 40 new studies. This is a business which has a history of performing over 200 oncology and rare disease trials across its previous 20-year history. This gives us a very significant foothold in North America and significantly increases our ability to go out and win larger deals in the USA, increase our win rate and increase our win rate in the USA. And that was the strategic intent behind this acquisition. On the pharmacovigilance side, there is very much a similar transition to the application of digital and technology to this business. We're already well along the track here with having made investments in this area over a number of years, and we're working with some of the recognized leaders in this field, such as Automation Anywhere, Data Robot. We're transitioning to Oracle Argus as our database of choice. And so, again, this gives us a significant competitive advantage, and we believe will also help to accelerate our growth. This business, Prime Vigilance, has proved extremely resilient during the COVID-19 pandemic. And this is because we are providing an essential service where companies must comply with regulatory regimes, not just in the UK, but in North America, in Europe, and around the world, for drugs which are already on the market. So the process of collecting adverse reaction information in relation to these drugs and other medical information has to be in place. There is a regulatory requirement. If that is not complied with, then the sponsors of these drugs can find themselves undergoing significant challenge. And so we provide that service and ensure that it is complied with. And the effect of that is that from year to year, each cohort of annual clients tends to grow year on year, giving us more products to look after and more geographies to cover. And that comes out very clearly, as you can see in the chart on the right-hand side. The Prime Vigilance USA integration, which we carried out, acquisition, which we carried out in January 2020, has gone extremely well for us. The integration was very quick and very successful. We've contracted over £10 million of business that we otherwise would not have won without this presence in the USA. And our pipeline at the 31st December of new business opportunities was over £17.5 million. Two final slides. One to talk about cross-selling opportunities. We have found that these two businesses, CRO and Prime Vigilance, work extremely well together. The opportunity to sell the clinical trial service to the pharmacovigilance clients, the opportunity to sell the pharmacovigilance to the CRO clients is one that we have explored, and it's proved to be very fruitful for us in terms of cross-selling. And you can see here that in 2020 we achieved £8.6 million of actual sales in cross-selling, and that our pipeline as we come into 2021 is over 51 million of cross-selling opportunities. And I'll finish with a summary just by reiterating some of the strategic achievements of 2020. We maintained and developed our focus in oncology and rare disease. We've continued to invest and develop our leadership position in technology. We carried out 2 strategic acquisitions, both in CRO and pharmacovigilance. We completed the strategic transition from our former co-development strategy. We're well placed to continue to grow. Our cross-selling is working well. We've been resilient during the COVID-19 crisis and have contributed to research in the COVID-19 area. We have a very strong financial platform and a basis for future organic and strategic M&A growth.
And we've only got a couple of minutes left, I'm afraid, so I'm only going to have time for a couple of quick questions. Had a few people asking about dividends. Any intention to start paying a dividend, or could you give an indication of what position you'd want to be in before you might start paying a dividend?
Yes, thank you for that question. Very good question. I will just say that the focus of the board is really on how quickly we can grow the business. We feel there are significant investment opportunities ahead of us for organic growth, for investment in technology, but also M&A. And we think that our growth story is a very strong one, and we think that that is what is the primary focus of our investors at this time. The purpose of doing the capital reduction was to really align our balance sheet with the very strong financial position that the company finds itself in. So to be showing a deficit on our balance sheet at a time when we are debt-free, we're growing rapidly, we're profitable and significantly cash generative, just seemed anomalous and incorrect. So we wanted to make sure that we corrected that. It does put us in the position that if and when we decide that it's appropriate to start paying dividends, we're able to do so, and there are some good reasons for doing that, expanding the shareholder register and giving a return to shareholders. But right now we feel that the board's focus and our investors' focus is on the continued growth, development, and share price growth in the company, and that's where all of our energy is focused. So at the moment we haven't really discussed or decided on the transition to a dividend policy, and we're just not at that point yet.
Understood. And had a few questions, and as our final one for this evening, about have you looked at or considered a US listing? I guess if your focus on the US business and the opportunities there and some of the valuations that companies seem to be achieving, is that something that's on your agenda at all?
Yeah, again, a very good question, because that opportunity is certainly there. You know, we're starting to have a significant presence in the USA, a significant part of our revenue generation, as we saw on the earlier slide when we were talking about the 82% revenue growth in North America, is coming from the USA. We're starting to have a number of investors on our register who are US institutions. And so the point may come in the future when it would be appropriate for us to have a listing in the US as well. And that's certainly something that we have in our sights. There are no particular plans. There is no process that's underway that's taking us in that direction just at the moment. But it certainly is something that we have on our radar.